Hey everyone, we are so excited to share that we are adding the finishing touches on our newest cookbook that we hope to get out to you within the next 2 weeks. We are so sorry that it's taken so long for us to get this project complete, but that's the kind of thing that kind of happens when we are just a team of 2. In the meantime, here are a few of our Chinese restaurant favorites that will be in the new cookbook. I have a pound of beef flank steak, and I like using flank for Chinese cooking because you can cut them really thinly across the grain, and the grain is super visible to see. So I'm just going to cut this up into 3 sections so that they're easier to slice. Oh my goodness, do just sharpen my knives. If you can check out our most current video, but it is super razor sharp. It's awesome. Check it out, dude.
Wow. Just make sure you keep your fingers out of there.
I'm marinating the beef with 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. The cornstarch will give the beef a more velvety texture. That's why it's called velveting. I'm adding 2 teaspoons of rice wine. Normally I use Shaoxing wine, which is also a rice wine, but this one is a little bit different. I'm using it because I'm out of Shaoxing wine. But you can also use bourbon or whiskey or anything like that that you have at home. Dry or sherry. 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. And we're just going to stir this up. You know, I don't measure because, you all know that I can't be bothered with that. It was probably a little bit more than 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. It's not going to make a huge difference. I'm not baking a cake. And that's what I love about Chinese cooking. It's because when I was growing up watching my grandmother cook, she would just tell me, oh, just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but there's never any measurements. And she didn't use any measuring spoons. So you can free yourself from being so, I don't know, particular about measuring accurately. It's not that important. Just don't put in a whole 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I'm just going to set it aside to marinate while I prepare the rest of my ingredients. Okay, I have a medium size, or maybe it's a large onion. I'm going to slice. And I like to slice my onions, not in rings or half rings, but from top to bottom. I just find that it holds its shape better. Wow, this knife is doing just as good a job as my santoku. I also have 1 red pepper. I'm just going to take out the seeds and the stem and the membrane.
The membrane.
We're also going to slice these into strips. And do the same with the green pepper. So in Chinese cooking, it is really important to get all of your ingredients and things ready to go because the cooking part of it goes really, really fast. So I have a small piece of ginger here that I'm just going to slice up.
A weird thumb.
We're just going to leave them in big slices like this. And that's just to flavor the oil, really. And 2 green onions, just cut into 2-inch lengths. I'm using 2 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to run it through my garlic press. I have 2 teaspoons of sugar, and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of dark soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of regular soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, 1 tablespoon of the cooking rice wine, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, and 2 tablespoons of water. Just going to dissolve the sugar and the cornstarch, and that's your sauce that you'll pour at the end.
I'm getting that aroma from here.
I know, it smells so good. Okay, to make sure that the cornstarch and sugar is all dissolved, using a whisk actually really helps. So you don't want those cornstarch lumps to be in your sauce. Otherwise you'll get lumpy sauce. I'm using freshly ground pepper, so I did grind up a teaspoon of black pepper, but you can use the already ground pepper if that's all you have. And people ask about my wok all the time, and unfortunately there isn't one that I could recommend because this was handcrafted that I picked up about 20 years ago in our Chinatown. So sorry, this is stainless steel, and I'm sorry I don't have one to recommend.
It's a one of a kind.
It is a one of a kind. Heating up the wok on high heat, adding 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Turn this around. And we're going to put half the beef in to cook. Let it sit and sear for just a minute before moving it around. You want it to be about 70%, 80% cooked. And then we're going to put it in a clean bowl and get the other half going. Adding 1 more tablespoon of vegetable oil. Okay, I'm taking out the rest of the beef. I turned off the heat because sometimes the heat just keeps the wok too hot. Just going to set that aside. Turn the heat back on. This time we're going to turn it on to medium. I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon of vegetable oil. Adding our ginger. And then the rest of our vegetables. So the onions and the red pepper and the green pepper. It's like Christmas in here.
Yeah, a lot of color.
Just stir frying for 3 minutes or so until your vegetables are tender. Gonna add our garlic and stir fry for another 30 seconds. You don't want to add your garlic in too early because garlic does burn very easily. We're just going to push the vegetables off to the side, make a hole in the middle, and we're going to add our sauce. Oh my goodness, it smells amazing right now.
Oh yeah.
Okay. We're going to add our beef back in along with any of the juices. Okay, and then we're adding our black pepper. Woo, I want to sneeze. Okay, and then toss in your green onions. Just for another 30 seconds. And that is it. I'm going to start with the nuts. I'm heating up my little pot here using a 1/4 cup of water along with a 1/4 cup of sugar. And we're going to turn this into sort of like a caramelized simple syrup to cover the nuts. So this is on medium heat. Syrup tends to burn really quickly once you get to a certain point, so you gotta watch it. So the caramel is boiling. So we want this to turn an amber color. Now it goes from amber to burnt really, really fast, so you really have to watch it. It'll take about 3, maybe up to 5 minutes, but like I said, you just really have to watch it to make sure it doesn't go beyond the color that you want. Okay, so this is 3 minutes. You want it to be a little bit more than this. You see most of the water has evaporated. You just want enough to coat the nuts. Okay, I'm turning off the heat. It's only been about 30 seconds more. So 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm dumping the nuts in. Okay, so we want to cover all the nuts. Using chopsticks helped a little bit. And we did want to keep the heat on a little bit longer, maybe on a lower temp, so that it doesn't burn, which is like starting to do now. And then get this onto a pan lined with parchment paper. Don't use paper towel because it will stick to the paper towel. So I'm just going to try to separate these nuts as best as we can. And pecans work really well in place of walnuts because they're quite similar. And who doesn't like praline pecans? Okay, so as you can see, the sugar will solidify very quickly. So you gotta work fast. Like I said, this is the hardest part, making sure you get the candied nuts right. Okay, we're just gonna set this aside to cool. And a reminder, never touch the caramel with your finger, ever. It's really, really hot and it will burn you. I'm using about 1 pound of shrimp here. You can use prawns. I really don't know what the difference is. I've taken off the shells and they already came deveined, so the veins have been taken out. And I've given them a rinse, they're defrosted, and I've patted them dry with some paper towels. This is Kat in training to make sure that they can behave while I cook and when we are filming. They pay no attention to us, really, most of the time. They just want to bite the wires that are everywhere. The last time I made this was years ago, actually, before air fryers were even a thing. And so I think it was probably the one time I decided that it was worth deep frying. So if you don't have an air fryer, you can always deep fry. And I am using about 1/2 cup of potato starch. And you know, normally I would take each one and dip it in the potato starch, but if I can find a better way, because I can't be bothered, I'm gonna try. So these are, again, I had dried the shrimp, and I'm just going to see if I can get them coated. Whoa, that probably wasn't very smart, huh, dude?
No comment.
Oh, but look, so much faster than dipping each one individually.
Here on the set of FLO'S channel, fly by the seat of our pants.
Okay, I preheated my air fryer to 325 and I heated it up for about 2 minutes just to get it warm. And I'm gonna put the shrimp in here now and see how many I can fit in a single layer. I might have to do this in a couple of batches. Maximize space. And if you don't have potato starch, you can use rice flour or even cornstarch. I don't think cornstarch gives as good of a crunch on them, but you can try. But if you're deep frying, cornstarch would work just fine. Because shrimp and prawns don't have any fat on them, I am going to spray it with some vegetable oil. Okay, cooking this for 8 to 10 minutes on 325 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll just start with 8. And then we're going to toss them halfway through. So I will check on it at 4 minutes. The sauce is super easy to make. We are using a 1/4 cup of mayo. And 2 tablespoons of condensed milk. About a teaspoon of lemon juice. I'm just using this bottled lemon juice because I keep this just in case. I need some without having, if I didn't have any lemons. And a pinch of salt. And that is it. Oh my goodness, the other dangerous thing about making this is that if you don't have a can of sweetened condensed milk already available, what are you gonna do with the rest of it? All right, we are just wanting these to be cooked through. The potato starch, what it does is it gives the mayo something to stick to. So there's just a little bit of crispiness on the outside. It only took me 6 minutes in the air fryer. So depending on the size of your shrimp, it may be more or less 6 to 8 minutes of cook time. At the halfway mark, when I stirred the shrimp around, I did notice that there was some potato starch that wasn't getting crisped up. And so I just gave it another squirt of oil, and that seemed to help a little bit. So I'll just put it all in this bowl for now. And they are a little bit crispy, even though that's not what we're going for, but in any case. Okay, dumping all of this into my mayo sauce. And we're just going to make sure everything gets coated. Oh my goodness, it smells so good.
I am so hungry, dude.
Don't forget the nuts. Just toss that in there. And if you think that's too many nuts, you didn't have to add all of it. You can just eat the other half on its own. I'm just putting this into a serving plate so that it looks nicer. I have about 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And I'm just gonna cut these up into probably 1.5 to 2-inch pieces.
I like to call them BS thighs.
Of course you do, dude. Someone can't be bothered.
Yep.
I'm adding a tablespoon of soy sauce to the chicken and an egg. Now this is kind of like, instead of dredging all the chicken into your egg, I'm just putting the egg in with the chicken before I put the starch on top.
So what you're saying is that the egg came after the chicken.
Okay.
Please excuse the dad joke.
Well, it is Father's Day after all. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
What about me?
And you. While the chicken is marinating, I'm going to prepare the rest of my ingredients that are going to go into the dish. I have a little piece of ginger. It's not even a finger size or a thumb size. It's just a little piece of ginger that I'm going to grate, and it's going to give me about a teaspoon, and that's all I want. And you know what? If you guys don't like ginger, don't even bother. Since I already have the grater out, I'm also going to grate a clove of garlic. You can just mince this or put it through a garlic press, whatever you like. I just put it in the same dish because I will be adding it to cook at the same time. So we're just gonna set that aside. I have 1 stalk of green onion. It's a pretty big stalk, so you can use 2 smaller stalks if that's what you have. In my research, what I found was almond chicken is always served on a bed of lettuce. So I have 3 leaves of romaine lettuce here, and I'm just gonna kind of shred it up and put that on my plate. Okay, I'm just gonna put that on my platter now. I have about 3.5 ounces of shiitake mushrooms. Now I realize that most recipes I've seen, it's canned mushrooms, and I cannot bring myself to buy a can of mushrooms. I just don't like the texture of those mushrooms, but if that's what you want to use, by all means. I'm just taking off the little stems because they're not, they're very chewy and it's really hard to eat. So I like to take the stems off the shiitake mushrooms.
Yeah, you do that, you mushroom elitist.
Well, and I think the shiitake mushrooms will give the gravy a really nice flavor.
But I agree with you, canned button mushrooms are
Blah, sorry,
gross.
just can't.
Gross, dude.
And if you don't want to use shiitake mushrooms, you can always just use regular button mushrooms, whatever you like. But I honestly think fresh is better. Okay, I'm going to thinly slice these mushrooms. This probably looks like a lot of mushrooms as well, but that's because I am not using the bamboo shoots and I'm not using any water chestnuts. So I'm just going to use mushrooms. And again, if that's not what you like, if you want to add bamboo shoots and or water chestnuts, by all means, you can put whatever you like in the sauce, the gravy. Okay, we're using the air fryer today, and I'm going to use about half a cup of potato starch. I'm going to put the potato starch in a plastic bag because I think I have found that this is way easier to dredge the chicken pieces than to each one, like to dredge each piece by piece. This is part of my can't be bothered. I know I'm using a plastic bag, but it really does simplify things. And if you don't want to use a plastic bag, then you're welcome to dredge each piece by piece.
You know, Shake and Bake was onto something.
And I may have to do this in a couple of batches because my air fryer is small. And I am trying to like not get put all the liquid. I'm trying to drain as much off of each piece of chicken as I can. Okay, zip it up. Give it a shake. Okay, I've preheated my air fryer to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Put each piece in there. I'm going to give this a spray with vegetable oil. And we're going to cook it for 10 to 12 minutes. And we're going to toss it in between at the midway mark. So turn it on 400 degrees for, say, 12 minutes. While the chicken is cooking, we're going to toast our almonds. Just going to put this on medium heat, maybe a medium low actually. I don't want to burn the almonds. Half a cup of sliced almonds. It's basically a handful. And if you don't have sliced almonds, you can use slivered almonds, or I don't know if I would use whole almonds, just something that will give a little bit of a crunch and some texture. Turning off the heat once you start to see it toast a bit. That took about 4 minutes. Just put them back in this bowl for now. And one way to tell when your almonds are starting to toast is you can start to smell the almonds toasting. That's usually my indicator. Right, putting my pan back on medium heat and adding about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. Put our ginger and our garlic in. I'm just going to cook this for about 30 seconds so that we're flavoring the oil. I love the smell of garlic and ginger cooking. Adding our mushrooms. I'm going to cook these for about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so you might want to lower the heat a little bit because you don't want the garlic and the ginger to burn while you're cooking the mushrooms. So just make sure that you just lower the heat. And you do have to keep the mushrooms moving, and as they cook, it will start to release a little bit of liquid, and that will help the ginger and the garlic not to burn at the bottom. Okay, now that your mushroom is pretty much cooked through, I'm gonna add 1.5 cups of chicken stock. Scrape up any bits that are at the bottom. And bring that to a simmer. And again, I have it on low heat. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. And 1 teaspoon of dark soy sauce. And that will just make your brown sauce more brown. And if you don't have dark soy, just use regular soy, it's fine. About 1/4 teaspoon of ground white pepper. And about 1/2 teaspoon of sesame oil. Stir this in. We'll just wait for it to simmer a bit. All right, I am lowering the heat again. It's already on low. Okay, and I'm gonna make a cornstarch slurry. I'm gonna take 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, adding 1 tablespoon of cool water or room temperature water. And we are using room temperature or cool water because cornstarch won't dissolve otherwise. If you use hot water, it will just turn into a lump. Okay, once it's dissolved, add it to your sauce. You might not need all of it depending on what kind of consistency you want. So a little bit more. See how that's nicely thickened? Add a little bit more. It depends on how thick you like your gravy. Okay, I used almost all of the cornstarch slurry. Look at how lovely it's thickened into this like luscious sauce. So good. All right, turning off the heat. Chicken is almost done. For the second batch of chicken, I had to add about 1/4 cup of potato starch back into the bag so that I could coat the remaining chicken. And again, I cooked it for 6 minutes, flipped them over, gave it another spray of vegetable oil, and cooked for another 6 minutes. So 12 minutes total for each batch with flipping in the middle. All right, here's the second batch. I already placed the first batch on the plate. You know what this totally reminds me of, dude? When we were traveling across Canada, remember that restaurant we went to in Saskatoon?
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the Midwest of Canada is where Saskatchewan is. And in this restaurant, this woman, she had to come out to meet us because she heard there was a Chinese family from Vancouver in her restaurant. And so when she found out what we ordered, she was a little bit taken back. She's like, oh no, I can cook you something else, because in Vancouver, we have amazing Chinese food and it's not the westernized Chinese food. And so she was a little bit taken back that we would come into her restaurant and eat her Canadian or westernized Chinese food. And I said, oh no, it's fine. We want to try it. And she said, she was just so humbled by our comments, and she sat down and just chatted with us a little bit. And it turned out she was from the same village as my dad. It was just amazing connection. If you want to hear more about that story, you got to check it out. And don't forget your almonds. And maybe you don't need all of it. I maybe used about 2/3 of it.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's enough.
Yeah.
And your green onions. And again, you won't need all of it. I have 2 pounds of pork riblets. I've already removed the silver skin from the back so that the marinade can more easily be absorbed into the meat. And I'm just going to cut it up into the little segments. You want them to be, well, bite-sized pieces, which will happen as I cut in between the bones. Just going to throw them in my bowl.
You know, the dim sum size of these riblets are even smaller.
Yeah, well, I guess because I buy these at Costco and they come in a much bigger pack. I'm only using 2 of the ribs. I think there are like 5 or 6 of these in a Costco sized bag or package. And if you buy them from an Asian market, you'll probably get them smaller, like maybe about an inch and not like an inch and a half to 2 inches. It doesn't matter. Still yummy. We're gonna add the marinade to the meat. So 1 tablespoon of oil, cooking oil. I'm using corn oil today. That's just what I have. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. And this is just regular soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of rice wine. And if you don't have rice wine, you can just use a dry sherry or maybe a little bit more. We've used bourbon in the past. If you don't want to use the rice wine at all, just omit it. I've got 2 teaspoons of sugar. That just helps to balance out the flavors. Adding 1/2 teaspoon of ground white pepper. And 1/2 teaspoon of 5-spice powder. Oh, it smells so good. Okay, we're just gonna mix this up, let it marinate for about half an hour. The longer you let this marinate, the more flavorful it will be. But if you're short for time, half an hour is gonna do just fine. You can even marinate this overnight. What I'm gonna do is marinate a bunch because I still have like 3 or 4 racks of this rib left, and just marinate it and toss it in the freezer so that I will have already pre-marinated meat for the next time.
Look at all those great colors on the board.
I know, it's going to be so yummy. I have 4 cloves of garlic. You can use as little or as much as you like. You can add more. We're going to prepare all the remaining ingredients while we're waiting for the pork to marinate. And if you want to use a garlic press, feel free to do that as well. But I have time, so I'm just going to chop everything up. 2 stalks of a green onion. I'm going to separate the white part and the light green part from the dark green. I'm just going to add that to the garlic. Okay. And we're going to cook all that together. And then the dark green, we're going to save for garnish at the end. I have a small bunch of cilantro here, and for all of you who don't like cilantro, you don't have to use it at all. We're just using it because we actually quite like the flavor of cilantro with this dish. And again, you can use as little or as much as you'd like. And I have 1 Thai chili, and I know this is already going to be too much for us, but it brings a lot of color and a lot of heat into the dish. You can use as many as you'd like. It's also called a bird's eye chili, I think. I'm just gonna cut this finely. We're gonna add this also to the garlic and green onions. We're gonna saute all of this in the oils, and it's gonna be, oh, so good. So if you've touched some of this, I would advise that you wash your hands quickly, just in case you touch your face or forbid your eyes. Just gonna make the seasoning salt, and this is just slightly different than the seasoning salt I used in the Taiwanese popcorn chicken. This one has more salt than that one, so you can adjust it however you'd like, but I like to have some of this kind of on hand. So 1 teaspoon of salt, just using kosher, a little bit coarse, salt, about a 1/4 teaspoon of 5-spice powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground white pepper. That's it. That's your seasoning salt. I think for my Taiwanese popcorn chicken, it was equal parts of all 3 ingredients. This one just has a bit more salt. Instead of deep frying, we are using the air fryer today. I've already preheated it at 375, just for a couple of minutes. I'm using about 1/2 cup of sweet potato starch, only because I couldn't find potato starch today. And if you don't have potato starch, which you can usually find in an Asian market, you can always use cornstarch, but it won't be as crispy as the potato starch. So I'm going to add 1/2 of the ribs in here. The impatient side of me wants to dump everything in there, but I won't.
Thanks for exercising patience.
So I'm going to have to do this in 2 batches because my air fryer is not very big. So the optimum amount is, well, I shouldn't say optimum amount. The maximum amount I should do at any one given time is 1 pound. There. Just get them nicely coated. I'm going to put them in. Once they're nicely coated, we're going to toss them in here, the air fryer. All right, if I stand them up a little bit, I can actually fit more. So let's do that. Ta-da. All right, I'm going to spray them with some oil. I do find that you should try to coat your pieces with the oil so that you don't get any like uncooked floury bits. I'm just going to turn these around a little bit so that I can make sure that they are all covered in some vegetable oil. Okay. Still way less oil than if you were to deep fry it. Okay. Putting it in the air fryer at 375 for 8 minutes, and then we're going to flip them and cook for another 8 minutes. So 16 minutes total. All right, just wanted to show you what it looks like at the 8-minute mark. We're just going to move it around a little bit, and they are already feeling quite crispy on the outside. Oh, and it smells amazing. All right, putting it back in for another 8 minutes. All right, let's see what we have. Oh my goodness, they look so good. Okay, I'm gonna pull these out. All right, I'm adding another 1/2 cup or so of the potato starch, sweet potato starch, and adding my remaining pieces. Okay, shake them up. The reason why I'm using the freezer bag actually is that it's just easier to get them evenly coated quickly. Otherwise, the can't be bothered side of me wants to just dump the potato starch into the bowl with all the marinade, and then it would just be clumpy and not good. Okay. While the second batch is cooking, we're going to cook up our aromatics. I am using a wok today, so I find that it's easiest to toss all the things in the end. But if you have a large frying pan or even a Dutch oven would do, we want the wok heated up on medium. Once you see a wisp of smoke, you can tell that it's hot enough. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of oil, cooking oil. I'm using corn oil today. And we're going to add our chilies, garlic, and the white and light green parts of the green onion to the oil and slowly cook that. It's just going to take 30 seconds to about a minute, and then we're going to turn it off. That's it. How easy was that?
Yeah, you don't want to burn that garlic.
Yeah, you don't want to burn the garlic, but you want all the flavors. The second batch is now done, and so I'm going to heat up my aromatics again just to warm them up. And then I'm going to toss my first batch in there first so that we can warm those back up because they've been sitting a little while now. Okay, while these are warming here for just a minute, I'm going to go grab the other ones. I'll toss these in. Okay, and I just turned off the heat. I'm going to keep tossing this just for a second. Okay, and I'm adding all my greens. And also adding some of that seasoning salt. And you can add as little or as much as you'd like. Whatever you're comfortable with. Give it a quick toss. And I'm gonna put it on a plate.
Oh, the aroma is Flo. It's so good.
It smells delicious. All right, just adding a few chilies for garnish to make it look a little bit prettier.